I'm going to read a little bit because there's some people I want to point out and thank. I'm going to do that as quickly as I can to give the respect to these people that I think they deserve. Then I want to move into the real nature of what I'd like to say today about some very special people that impacted my entire life. But as Bill DeWitt III mentioned in his comments, there are some people who in the last month have worked very, very hard to make certain that me and my family, who have come from all over this country and in some cases the world, to be here today. And Brian Finch and Ashley Brown have smoothed every glitch I anticipated and solved every problem that I thought I might have getting all these people here on this day. So I'd like to thank them. I'd also like to thank the Vice President and CFO, Brad Wood, who I go back with days when I was a farm director. These three people have made this thing today as smooth as it could possibly be. So I'd like to thank them before I go any farther. I'd also like to thank the St. Louis Cardinal baseball organization, of course, but I'd also like this incredible fan base that has evolved here, known as Cardinal Nation, and directly responsible for inducting someone like me. I know how difficult it can be for some of us, my age or near it, to get online and surf the net and find where they have to go and mark the box. I appreciate all those people who've done that, and I also appreciate the ones who are young, who stream and do all kinds of miracles, because most of them never saw me play, but I guess saw the numbers and thought I was worthy, and they checked that box in a matter of seconds, so I'd like to thank them too. The Bill DeWitt family you've heard from today, and I'd like to point out how pleased and grateful I am for what they have done here. First of all, putting together this Hall of Fame business where we can all come and kind of look back, and particularly their efforts and their vision and the construction of that St. Louis Cardinal Baseball Hall of Fame Museum, which I went through myself for the first time today, and I guess it's been up about a year or so, but if you haven't been in there, that's a really nice walk down memory lane, and their commitment to that place is really special because it gives fans to come here, look back, and remember people like myself who played, for the most part, many years ago. So I want to thank them and commend them for what they've done. Now, my two closest friends in baseball have made a special effort to come here today. Peter Dennis Vukovic I've known forever. He's a former Cardinal pitcher and former Cy Young Award winner. He also has been very special to me, and he's made a very special effort to come here. And the other young man by the name of Bill Brick, who is presently a Major League scout for the Arizona Diamondbacks and a member of the Major League Baseball Scouts Hall of Fame. And as I say, these two people I've known the longest and been nearest me for the longest time, and I appreciate them coming. Now there's one other fellow some of you may have seen already and recognized, but this young man is named John Hamm, and he grew up with my sons. But I'd only say that For those of you who don't know him, just Google his name. Don't worry about the spelling because it's going to pop right up and you find out all about him. I'd like to make a very special mention of these people here today. Some are here, some aren't, but they've become friends of Marianne and I over the years in St. Louis and made our life here very special. Tony Guerrero, John LaSala, Steve Horn, Mary Jane Rosenfeld, Laurent and Betty Torno Jr., Ed Calcaterra, Dennis Corrigan, Jimmy Mannion, Bud, Susie Wilson, Ernie, Carolyn Clark, and Sue and Jim Cullermain. They're here as special friends. They made the effort. I appreciate it a lot. I'd also mention Craig Reese, Matt Orland, Keith Mankiewicz, Andres Natali, William Catalona, none of which are here today, but if it weren't for these men, I wouldn't be here either. I'd like to thank Bob Bowman, Gene Gieselman, Dr. Stan London. The first two names mentioned were head trainers for the Cardinals of that period I was here. And of course, Stan London was with team doctor. And I appreciate everything those three men did to keep me on that field. I won't forget them for it, ever. I was the farm director for the St. Louis Cardinals from 1998 to 1992. And I had helpers, Judy Beretta, Judy Francis, Lee Weber, John Vooch, Scott Smolzinski, C.J. Cherry. Now, I got to tell you, that first year I was farm director, I mean, I hadn't gotten my management style quite down yet. I had just come from that field, and it was pretty rough, and I thought any moment, any one of these people or all of them were going to just up and leave. But they stayed. I'm grateful because over time, I guess I got to know where I was going and appreciate all their help and assistance. Three others, Jerry Risch, Buddy Bates, and Rip Rowan. I got to know them as teenagers. I came for the first time as a 19-year-old kid in September of 1968, and they were in the clubhouse. Clubhouse manager at that time was, most of you people remember, Butch Yakiman, and he had helpers. They were his helpers. And when Butch retired, Buddy took over for the home clubhouse. Jerry went to the visitor's side, and Rip kept helping. Buddy resigned. Rip took over the clubhouse for Buddy, and both Rip and Jerry are the clubhouse men to this very day. So I guess it's been, I don't know, near 40 years, and we've known each other that long, and I thank them for everything they've done. Now I'm going to put these aside. I'm going to take off my glasses, and I'm going to talk about some other people here. And the first guy I want to talk about is a man by the name of Joe Cunningham. Now, a lot of you people remember Joe, but I remember him as my first professional manager out in Modesto, California, when I first went out there as an 18-year-old. And all my life, everyone kept telling me, you know, Teddy, you're going to make it. You know, you can hit, and you can catch, and you're going to make it. And I'd listen to him from the time I was 12 to the time I was 14 years old. And they'd be all saying it, and I'd be saying, well, how do they know? I mean, any of them playing the majors? When I was 14, nobody I knew had. But all these people telling me I was going to make it. I'd hear it, but I just kept on going. Well, when they sent me out to Joe, the first time, he was the first manager I ever had that had played in the major leagues. Not only had he played there, he'd hit real well. And he was the kind of guy that people knew. And frankly, I had his baseball card. And that's a fact, but he saw me right away in that first week. And he said, Teddy, you're gonna make it. I'm telling you, you're gonna make it. You can hit. It's just a matter of time for you. And he's the first guy I said to myself, you know, this guy, he might know what he's talking about. He's been there. And I started to believe that maybe I would get there. And so off I went, and out in Modesto that year as an 18-year-old, I did everything you can imagine. Homers, RBIs, everything. And I was feeling, as most 18-year-olds do, absolutely bulletproof. And I'd be going down that road, and I'd be trying to stay on that straight and narrow, and all of a sudden I'd feel that front tire get on that shoulder, and then the back tire get on there too, and that car'd start shaking, and I'd hit a rut, bang, right in the ditch I'd go. And I'd sit there and say, what happened? Feel this guy reach over, grab me by the neck, pull me up, and he said, now Teddy, look, there's all kinds of distractions out there, man. And these distractions, man, you gotta pay attention, because these guys mean business out there, and you know, you gotta stay on that straight and narrow. Focus, man. So I got you, Joe. I'd go back out there, and I'd go back doing good. Off the road I'd go again, pull me back on, and Joe would say, Teddy, these people are gonna get in your way. You've gotta stay on the straight and narrow. If you don't, you might not get your goal. Well, I think about Joe a lot, because he convinced me that it would happen. And at the end of that season, I was called up for the first time in September and did get to the major leagues. So I want to thank Joe for that, because it impacted me right from the start. I appreciate it a great deal. Second man I want to talk about, it's right back here. Red Schoendienst. Red Schoendienst was my... Red was my very first manager here when I got to the major leagues, the place I'd been trying to get. And the circumstances, I'm going to take a second, please hang with me, to tell you how it happened and why. I was at AAA that season, and the club at the major league level was basically set. And the third baseman was Mike Shannon. And the catcher that winter had just come over from the Atlanta Braves, and he was going to be the catcher for the Cardinals, is Joe Torre. And along about May, very tragic thing, dramatic thing happened to Mike. And Gene Giesemann, during spring training, had performed physicals on all of us. And this particular medical test showed up, and Mike was diagnosed with the very earliest stages of nephritis, the kidney disease. And he had to stop. And tragically, he never played again. But what happened was Torre was moved to third, and I was brought up from AAA. Well, when I got there, to say, well, I just was not major league ready. I was 20 years old. I mean, I was catching Bob Gibson, Steve Carlton, and everybody else up there, and I was just trying to catch the ball, not, you know, figure out what to do with my fingers and what pitches to call. I just was not ready. But the thing I wanted to point out about Red is he had to have been pulling his hair out, watching me try to do what I was supposed to do. But the reason I think I want to focus here on him is because never one time did I come off that field and look in Red's face and watch him roll his eyes, or turn his back, or scowl, or ever take me into the manager's office and say, hey boy, you better wake up, it's time, you got serious or something, because you're driving me crazy. Now, I'm sure he must have thought about that over and over, but never one time. I thank Fred Shaindienst because he gave me the shot. The only thing he did was play me every day, no matter what. Now, I'm trying to get there, so stay with me, but the third guy I want to thank is Whitey Herzog. Now, there's been a lot of talk about me and Whitey over the years, and I'm sure he's laughed a lot, so have I, but I'm going to tell you about Whitey and how he impacted me. See, I've been talking about the start and the beginning of my career. Well, I'm going to ask you to jump forward all the way to the end. And I was playing for the Atlanta Braves at the time. I was there with Bruce Sutter, and I had convinced myself I'd seen enough. And it was 20 years later, in 1988. And in August, Atlanta was coming to play the Cardinals for the last time that season. And so I had decided that maybe if I had a chance to talk to Whitey, who was the Cardinals' big league manager at the time, he could help me sort through that end of my career stuff. And so I went out, early batting practice, well, early. The Cardinals were finishing up their batting practice, and Whitey was sitting or standing behind the batting cage. And their batting practice was finishing up. I walked up and said, Whitey, I need to talk to you if I can. He said, sure, Teddy. What's up? I said, well, I've decided this is the end for me. But I don't know what I want to do other than I want to stay in baseball. I really do. And I don't really know how to go about that because I've been on the field my whole life. And he says, just like this, that quick. He said, how'd you like to be farm director? I looked at him, I said, you mean run the whole minors? He said, sure, you could do it. I used to do it. And so I said, well, how do I go about doing that? And he said, well, we got a problem over here. See, our present farm director is Jimmy Riggleman, and Riggleman is a field level guy. He wants to manage in the big leagues. Now, we've made him the farm director, and hell, he doesn't want that 9 to midnight stuff anymore, and that detail and administrative paperwork. He's just not he wants to manage in the big leagues. And so Max and I have talked. Del Maxfield was the general manager. He says, hey, how about, we'll get him back on the field. He's telling me this, and so he said, why don't you, at the end of the season, call Del, go have lunch with him. If you like what he says and he likes what you say, maybe it'll work out. And I said, Whitey, that's what I'll do. And so, season was over, I called Maxie, we had lunch, I became the farm director. And what I appreciate so much from Whitey is I worried about what I was going to do after my life on baseball the whole time. And I just had Whitey Herzog hand me an exit strategy. And that exit strategy has played because I'm still in this game. And I owe you much, Whitey Herzog. I can't stand up here and talk about myself much longer. I just can't do it. I've never been one to talk about who I used to be or what I used to do or what I accomplished. And I know I've said a lot, but I can't also stand up here and not say something about these other 3 men. 2 of them I knew real good. and one of them I came to know for what he represented. Curt Flood has been talked about by all these people, his wife, his daughter, and there's not much I can add other than to say that I knew what Curt Flood was after. It was happening the whole time I was young and as a player. I saw it evolve. I knew what he was after because I got what he was after. And when I tell you that free agency, or what it did for me and my family, I can only tell you that I thank you and his legacy from the bottom of my heart. Bobby Forsch, I knew real good, not just every fifth day for a period of time where we were battery mates. I got here a little earlier, and he came a little after, but we grew up and became men together out on that ball field. They used to sit right here. But I got to know Bobby real close through his daughters. Kristen and Amy went to school with my sons, John and Matt. And Bobby and I used to talk like parents do. Bobby asked me, well, I want to educate my kids right. And you were here before, what'd you do with yours? And we said, well, we sent them over to John Burroughs, and it's a really good place, and it's been good for us. And Amy, Kristen, went along grade school and right on through high school together. And as that sort of thing goes, you talk about everything as not as pitcher-catcher, but as parents. And that's how we got to know each other real good, because as they grew up, turned into, well, have you taken them to college? Or where do they like to go? And I sent mine off. Bobby sent off his. And we always talked about how it went. But there's one overriding factor about Forsch that you cannot ignore. He had that power-sinking fastball. And as a pitcher, when you thought you were in a crisis, he, from the time he was 9 years old, kept throwing that sinker and getting out of every crisis he was ever in. And so his confidence spilled over to us all. And when I say he had one incredible sinking fastball, trust me, I'm not lying. We're almost there, and I'm going to do my best to get through this, and it's going to be short because we've heard all about George. And I can't talk a long time about George. I just can't. People who know me know that I knew George. I knew him. I really did. I knew Ginny. Down in Florida in spring training, I spent more time playing cards with her and talking to George about baseball at the same time that you can ever imagine. I knew Dick, his son, we heard from. Dick was a little left-handed hitting second baseman, middle infielder. Run like a deer. Hit not so good. And I knew Kay. I knew them all. People ask me about George often because out there, people who weren't around him and didn't know him come to people who were, whether it's Mike, or whether it's me or others, or Mark DeJohn, or any of the others that have come under his guidance. I tell them real quick, 3 things. Best teacher I ever knew. Most profound fundamentalist in baseball ever was. And the most compassionate man on earth. Now I can't go any farther, because I just won't make it. But I tell you one thing. This organization, the St. Louis Cardinal Baseball Club, they gave me my start. June of 1967, they drafted me #1, 10th overall in the nation, and gave me my door in. I came to the major leagues for the first time as a St. Louis Cardinal, and I got my exit strategy from that field, from the St. Louis Cardinals also. Everything that's ever come has been either directly or indirectly from this organization. And I can't tell you how proud I am to be up here today with these other fine men and their family legacies to be entered into this St. Louis Cardinal Baseball Hall of Fame class of 2015.